Grant Anderson is joining us tonight. He's a counselor here in Indianapolis. Grant, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Give us an overview of Crosswinds Counseling. What is it that makes Crosswinds so special?
So yeah, we are existing to help those around that needing. We're in a time with mental health where we have so many people coming out of the woodwork for mental health needs. Anxiety and depression is on the rise. And so just having a place both in office and then telehealth, because we see them using both, has just been a tremendous place for people to come and meet the services they're really needing.
Are people utilizing both? We hear so much in the business world, so many Zoom meetings. Are people actually utilizing that service for counseling well during this pandemic phase of life?
It does depend on the type of client, of who wants to be in person, who wants to be in telehealth. I mean, there's a certain kind of client that we don't necessarily see on telehealth, whether they're high risk, whether they have suicidal ideations. We don't bring them into telehealth because it's just not appropriate. But we are seeing a lot of people who maybe are scared to go into that office or scared to even call into someone or more comfortable meeting with someone online.
Grant, you talked about the increased need. Has it been across the spectrum, or have there been certain things that over the last year and a half have really risen to the top among people that you're seeing?
Yeah, with the isolation of the last year, we're seeing anxiety, I think, left and right is coming out. People who didn't have symptoms of stress and anxiety in their life are now coming into counseling saying, I'm having anxiety for the first time, or it's exacerbated like it's never been before. And so we're seeing a lot of that coming out.
When you dive into those issues with people, obviously you can't share any specific stories, but what does that path out of anxiety look like? When you're actually diving into someone's anxiety and stress and helping them to work through those issues, what does that look like when you do that with a Crosswinds counselor?
So the symptoms can look different for each kind of person and client. Specifically, I'm thinking of an individual who, for him, it came off more obsessive compulsive. The anxiety came out in a specific world. For him, it was the spiritual, supernatural world, wondering if he was saved or not saved by every little thing. So whether if he didn't pick this up, was he going to hell? If he didn't sit there, was his spiritual eternal damnation, in effect?
Wow.
And so that anxiety continued to increase into an obsessive compulsive place. And so when we met, we first began working on it from that anxiety place and slowly started putting in what we call a kind of anxiety hierarchy. So things that he could do to slowly address the anxiety and use coping skills that would bring it down in the moment so that he knew he was in control of the anxiety, not the other way around.
When someone is functioning with that level of anxiety, I assume when the surrounding world gets more stressful and more anxious, it only compounds the problem, right? So if this is an issue before the pandemic and then we get into a pandemic, all of those things go through the roof. Is that right?
Right. And so for people who had the anxiety beforehand, who all of a sudden now they're isolated or they can't connect with friends or they have anxiety about even going out of their house now, those stress and those symptoms go through the roof.
Let's talk about the stigma around getting counseling, because I think 5-10 years ago, it was a much greater thing. It was certainly a real thing. Are we seeing the stigma actually starting to wane? I mean, we hope that it is, but is it actually waning?
I believe so. I think we're starting to see not just more, but across the generations coming into counseling. I think the younger generations are lessening the stigma a great deal, and I think the telehealth has actually helped a lot with people feeling that they can come to counseling now.
I think in a person my age, if you're 50 or older, you probably think, oh, you've got to hit rock bottom. You've got to be in a really bad spot to need a counselor. That's not the case. Sometimes it's just working through things. That sounded like an extreme example that you were giving about questioning salvation at every turn, but there's more normal, everyday things that you can work through with a counselor that might make a lot of sense for a lot of people. Is that right?
Right, and we're seeing people come in for just self-growth. They want to better understand where they're heading in their career, or sometimes it's, I want to work on this small level of anger. It hasn't affected my life where it's unstable, but I want to get help somewhere. And so they're coming in for a much less severe instability kind of issues.
Tell me about your career, Grant. You've been with Crosswinds for about a year here in Indianapolis, and you're on the north side of town.
Yep.
What is it that drew you to Crosswinds for your profession?
I think just a chance to work with individuals who are in such a need of services, but also just be able to meet them where they're at, before things get so out of hand that the state gets involved. I think it's being able to, I think Crosswinds for me was a chance to get in there and help them grow before incarceration, before the Department of Child Services came in, before other things, they got kids get sending off to residential facilities. I wanted to be able to kind of almost do preventive work in the therapy world I was working in.
That feels like it's heavy lifting every day. How, as a counselor, do you make sure to do self-care?
Yeah.
How do you make sure that you stay in a healthy spot so that you can then help others?
I think a big part of that is taking their own medicine. We got to make sure that we're using our own coping skills. If we're going to teach someone, this is what you got to do to have boundaries in your life, have, stress management, making sure that we're doing that as well.
That is critical, isn't it?
It is absolutely critical.
Let's talk about someone looking for Crosswinds Counseling help. How do they go about it? How can they reach out to you here in Indianapolis to start that path of getting counseling?
That's one of the things. They can call into our crosswindscounseling.org is our website, and then we will actually connect them up with a best fit therapist. So one of the things that we like to do is not just give them a therapist that has an opening or is free, but try to find someone who's going to meet their needs and have the best fit relationship possible, because we know that the relationship in counseling is so vital to therapeutic success.
And the Christian perspective too, that biblical foundation. I know from a Crosswinds perspective, it's core to who we are, but it's not something we hit people over the head with either.
Right, so we do see clients coming in without knowing that we're a faith-based organization. So we get an opportunity to talk about what it means to be a faith-based organization, as well as then explaining that, we don't just throw or slam, faith into your face in therapy. We let the client kind of drive that. Sometimes they want it, sometimes they don't. That doesn't mean we don't pray for clients outside of sessions. It doesn't mean we're not thinking about clients and praying over them before sessions.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Grant, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you. I know in the next couple of weeks, you're going to provide our counseling corner a couple of times. So thanks for doing that. Keep an eye out for Grant. He will be here frequently on Restoring Hope. Grant, thank you
Thank you
for
for
being
having
with
me.
us tonight. We'll be right back.